Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of the Rouge Rugby podcast where we talk about real Canadian rugby. I'm Stu Hardy, joined as always by Derek Brissett. And Derek, after the end of the main season of Major League Rugby, there was a doubt in my mind that maybe with fewer games there wouldn't be that much interesting action going on. And I'm glad to say that that is not the case, because we have had 4 fantastic games that have happened since we last recorded. And yeah, as in, there's the MLR eliminators, but there was also the Coast to Coast Cup. And so, midweek rugby, always good to have something going on. And then bumper weekend. So what did you make of it? Just as an overview perspective.
Yeah, I mean, we'll obviously get into it. The Top Gun is the Coast to Coast Cup champion, so that's obviously the highlight of the weekend. But and obviously, we'll get into it more. But I think just in general, the Coast to Coast Cup over the past I guess 8 days or however long that tournament really took to play, was kind of felt like a great step forward for Canadian rugby. And everything that happened with that tournament, I thought it went really well. The broadcast looked good, and I thought it was a great little advertisement for kind of the future of Canadian rugby. And considering the season that the big club had, it was nice to see a couple Big Arrows dubs this week. So that was awesome to see. As far as the MLR games too, it's playoff rugby at its finest, man. Every play, feels that much more important. Every tackle feels that much more important. Every mistake feels magnified. And, it's both. I don't want to say both games came down to the final play, because they really didn't. But, DC and Seattle both got really late insurance tries that kind of sealed the game. And then weirdly had New York and Houston both managed to score a try at the death that ultimately is too little too late. But both very close games, and maybe could have gone either way at some points, but I'm sure but it's another one that's just it's a great advertisement for the league that these games are. I think they're on national TV in the States. If correct me if I'm wrong. We're in Canada, so it's business as usual. Just turn on the Rugby Network, but it's a good advertisement for the league, the quality. And obviously we're ramping up to the final in Chicago, and it's cool to see across the groups, people planning their trips and everything. And then obviously the whole everything that the Hounds look like they're kind of building around the final with Shaq DJing and Dropkick Murphy's concert and stuff like that. All seems really cool, and it seems like it seems like the season's coming to a pretty exciting conclusion right now. So really exciting first round of the playoffs, and obviously the Coast to Coast Cup was amazing. And yeah, man, you want to get into it? You got any brief thoughts before we do, or?
I think it's only appropriate, being a Canadian rugby podcast, we put aside what's been happening south of the border and focus on the next generation of talent that's been proving itself out in Halifax. So let's start with the first game, the midweek one, which was the BC Bears versus the Academy. Now, obviously, it wasn't the BC Bears in the Coast to Coast Cup last year. That was the Canada West Selects, which is, pretty much the Pride by any other name. So,
well, this team had Pride guys, and
it did, but it wasn't the majority Pride players this time around, which is good. Giving opportunities to other guys, obviously under the guy of head coach Curry Hitchborn, who we've had on the podcast before. And was very honest on Twitter after the game against the Selects, saying that when the players win, it's for them. When they lose, it's on the coaches, and he was taking that responsibility, which was very refreshing approach to see, and very commendable. But let's talk about the game itself. So obviously there's no history of the Bears with the selects, but Canada West in this regard did put a number of them last time. And, it started off with the Bears getting 2 tries. The conversions were missed. But then we had the academy come in and, get on the board not too long afterwards. So, but I think it took a while to get there, I believe. So, sorry, it was a penalty first. Then it was the converted try to basically make sure that it was all even Stevens, close to half time. There was the second try, this time by the Arrows, that then took them into the lead. And then after the break, there had been words in the dressing room, and it was the Bears that came out. They were,
it was 17-10 BC at halftime, Stu.
Oh, 17-10. Oh, right. Sorry. My
I think
I remember it's 17. Yeah, 17-10, and the Arrows were leading at one point, but not
the Arrows were never leading in the first half. Yeah.
Yeah, so the Bears were leading 17-10, and then after the interval, it was then the Arrows that were able to tie it up again before BC got ahead of themselves, and then it was then the Arrow. I keep saying the Arrows. I should say Top Gun. We have to make that name. We have to make that name stick. So
I was gonna say we have to make it happen, right? We have to almost like manifest it. I know obviously the official name is going to always remain the Toronto Arrows Senior Academy, but I feel like we need to make Top Gun stick. We need to like edit like a little hype video for the Academy team, and it's like the Top Gun entrance with the
all right, future plans. But
off season's going to be slow. Let's do it then.
Yeah. So then Top Gun was able to get a few tries back on the board. Then there was Maloney converting the try from Espanyol, and then adding a penalty in the 79th minute, or maybe the 77th. But basically, the clock wasn't as accurate as you see on like MLR games, for example. And so with like 5 minutes beyond the 80th minute mark, it was still BC coming back into it. And so it gets right to the end, right at the death, and the Arrows give away a penalty. They're down a man, and BC goes for the tap and go. They've got the strength to push over. They don't want to waste time with a scrum and getting another player on, blah, blah, blah. And then I think it was like Sam Mace who was able to get underneath it. So it was held up on the try line. And you get this weird moment because obviously the clock has been 80 for the past few minutes or so. So you can't tell if it's time or not. So they're obviously celebrating because they've had the ball held up. So it's not a try. And the ref's explaining to the Bears captain what's going on. And then you hear him blow the whistle and the celebrations just start, players jumping into each other's arms and, been able to get this win under their belts. Fantastic momentum for them going forward because, they still have a game to play. And so the final score from that first encounter was BC Bears 27, Top Gun 32. Yeah, but it was but these are one of the good things about games, like coming back into them, and then right at the end, you have no idea what's going on. So it's a real nail biter and stuff. It's like, can you just hold on? Can you just hold on for another few seconds or minutes? Again, fix the clock. But
I think, this game was honestly, I think this kind of, I have some thoughts on how I maybe would want to see the Coast to Coast Cup kind of grow over the years, but it was like this was the exact type of game that I was like this is phenomenal rugby. Like it was a super entertaining game. Obviously, Zephyr Melnick got BC out to that big first half lead. He had a first half hat trick, and then was subsequently named to the Team Canada roster for the matches against Tonga. I wonder how much the first half hat trick had to play into that. Good for him, though. Good for him though. We'll talk about the rest of the roster later. But Zephyr Melnick, he was obviously outstanding in the first half of this game with a lot of great tries. But then it was cool because it was like the Arrows are down 17-3 in this game at one point. They come all the way back and end up leading 32-17, only for BC to basically make their own comeback. And the ultimately, as you said, the game ends with the ball being held up over the try line, right? So you have the game coming, the basically two comebacks in the game, and the game coming down to a huge defensive stand. The Arrows, I believe, had a yellow card at this point in time too during the game, if I'm recalling this correctly. So it was like that was a big defensive stand for the Arrows. And overall, like, really cool to see just a lot of players kind of taking their time in the spotlight to kind of step up. I mean, AJ Kasemple had two massive tries in this game, and then
Yeah.
he was making tackles everywhere. Gained a lot of meters, was super active. I know, like, looking for work a lot. You can find him at the breakdown. Doyle obviously scored a pretty nice try too, and Alexander Laurendo had another great try with Voskamp, who had one of two absolutely nasty game clinching offloads. We'll get to the other one in a minute too. But I think, like, overall, it's just a really exciting game for a whole bunch of guys that are trying to make the jump to the next level. And we saw with the Rugby Canada squad announcement, it looks like some are going to be doing that pretty quickly. But, like, it's it's just it was a great, super exciting game. Phenomenal display of rugby. And then obviously with Toronto winning, it set up basically a de facto final with the Atlantic Selects.
Yeah, now I think that really helped the appeal of the competition as well. I mean, you can't predict these kind of things, but having these games in the format they were and having the results of them just built more hype to it. So instead of it being a game of like, oh, they have to win by this many points and then they like would technically win, it's just simple. Whoever wins the whole thing. And that was really, really good to, just have that in like the back of your mind as it's building up. It's like, okay, 6 p.m. Eastern time on Saturday, there's, another rugby game that's not as important, but is for the championship. This is for the anchor.
Yeah, I gotta say, I feel really bad for the Seawolves and the Sabercats, who are obviously completely overshadowed in their.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's like second fiddle, and
Yeah, I know, right?
when you're Minnows and you just have to,
Well,
deal
I
with.
mean, like, the Selects and Top Gun are playing for, as you said, the coveted anchor, one of the greatest trophies in North American rugby. And like, Seattle and Houston are playing for the right to get slaughtered by San Diego next week.
It's no competition when you think about it of like what you're going
Yeah.
to watch. Anyway,
Congrats on having to work another week, Seattle.
yeah. Anyway, let's talk about the game itself, because both teams obviously coming into it knowing that victory was the most important thing they needed to do. The Arrows this time were able to get out of the gate quickly with Blaskowski getting the first try of the game, and then had a response from the Selects with penalty and then an unconverted try to push them ahead 8-7. The Arrows were able to regain the lead around about the 30-minute mark, but then that's the thing about this game. There's like a lot of back and forth in the first half, especially. It's like as soon as one team scored, it was just going to be the other team coming back and then taking the lead, and then the other team taking the lead. And so, it was a lot of work for Top Gun to do, to put it like that. And so we get to about the 55th minute, and then the Selects are ahead 18-17. And then, it's going ahead. It looks as though it's going the Selects way and it's going to be a home victory. And when it comes to a 2-score game, it's then a try scored by Evan Roy and the conversion going wide. But because of misconversions with the Selects, it's still within It just needs a converted try to do so. And then we get to the 79th minute, again, leaving it right to the end.
Yeah.
The selects kick into Arrow's territory, but the ball's gathered by Top Gun. It goes off, racing ahead down the wing, eventually over to Goodwin, who then finds Doyle, who then gets it up, who runs the 35 meters needed to.
How are you
the
talking
try.
about this try without mentioning Voskamp's offload? How did you just skip the over the head no look offload when describing this try?
Oh, that was Voskamp.
Voskamp and then Goodwin.
Okay, yeah. All right, sorry, Voskamp. Sorry, Ethan.
Skip that. That's the best part of the try.
Yeah, and well, scoring the try, I believe, is probably the best part of the try.
No, that was just Doyle. Like that was a light jog for Doyle after that. That was that off. That's the highlight.
Hey, as we found out within the Seattle Houston game, you can be knocked on without having anyone near you in any way, shape, or form. So
that's true too. Yeah, you do have to finish. Yeah, good finish, Doyle. Good finish.
Yeah,
a couple huge tries from him in this tournament.
Yeah. So, final. So the ball's dotted down. The clock says it's the 79th minute. The conversion happens. You're like, right, this is it. This is the game. But of course, the clock isn't as accurate as we would, I believe. And so the selects go and they are pushing. They are looking for it's a 1 point game. They know that a penalty, a drop goal, a try, anything, and they've got this. And so they're pushing ahead, but Top Gun's defense is on point. They're not conceding anything at all. So the penalty isn't coming. So selects decide to set up for the drop goal attempt. And if it wasn't for that poor pass, it's very likely that Hodgkins could have caught that and would have scored the drop goal, which would have elated the home crowd. Unfortunately, ball was short. Hodgkin wasn't able to collect it, knocks it on. You can hear the collective groan from both the select players and the fans in attendance. And the whistle goes. And by the skin of their teeth, the Top Gun Arrow Senior Academy are your Coast to Coast Cup champions for 2023 and hoist the anchor for all to see.
Yeah, unreal game. The end of that game though, that's tough. Just a poor pass. They had that the selects like strategically ran that play so well. Is just all the forwards working together, pushing it a little bit closer to the middle of the field. And obviously, Hodgkins already hit a drop goal earlier in that game, so he's got it in him. And so also know that the Top Gun defense has to be thinking about it too. And yeah, just a bad pass, just small execution error, but that's unfortunately the way it goes sometimes. I think from the Atlantic Selects point of view, though, that even though it ended with that bad pass, Jamin Hodgkins absolutely balled out in this game. He had obviously, a number of conversions and penalties that he kicked through it. He had a 50-22 at one point. He was getting breakdown steals. Breakdown steals, had a drop goal. He played fullback. He played fly half when their fly half got injured. Right. Just an absolutely phenomenal game from him. And it's one of those type of games that's kind of maybe you gets you excited and maybe you kind of want to see a little bit more of them later. So that was phenomenal. Obviously, there was a handful of great performances from the Arrows too. Like we kind of, Voskamp I thought was outstanding. The fly half, Tyrion Neville I thought was great. He was really, again, another guy that was really good off the boot. And obviously, Trape had the, it wasn't just the try that got scored at the end of the game for Doyle too. Like he had to hit that conversion. That was,
Mhm.
and which was also huge because he missed one like
Yeah.
2 minutes earlier, right? So, he kind of had the, buckle down and get the ice in his veins kind of moment. Because actually that was kind of interesting too, right? Because he missed a couple the Arrow or Top Gun, I gotta get used to saying Top Gun. We have to
Yeah.
force this to happen. But Top Gun had a few penalties early in the BC game, and they opted to have Trape like take a penalty from like deep and maybe not the best angle too, and he missed both of them. So really nice to see him kind of bounce back with such a clutch kick at the end of that game, which obviously ended up being the difference, right? Um, so like I thought that was great. Obviously, as you kind of said, good win, ends up winning player of the tournament and fully deserved, phenomenal 8-man. And he had great in the breakdown, made all his tackles, had some really strong carries. Obviously, as you mentioned, he was involved in the the play that the Arrows eventually won the game on, or the try that Doyle scored. He took that unreal offload from Voskamp and then moved the ball on to Doyle to finish that. At the end of the game too, like getting like all the trophies and stuff, his arm was obviously like in a sling. So
Yeah.
I kind of wonder if he like I'm trying to kind of figure out if he played through that too, or if he injured that super late in the game. But I mean there wasn't really a whole lot of time left for it. So I don't know. I just wonder when he actually did that. Because if he played the way he played without an arm, it's even more
Mhm.
impressive. If hopefully his everything's all right with him and he's able to get back on a rugby pitch soon. Thought he was great. Neville was great. Barring that one mistake where McCarthy kind of read that pass like a book and took it the other
Yeah.
way, which was a super exciting play. Um, Right, like the Atlantic Selects are so good too. They're a really good team. From seeing them in Toronto earlier this year, like they have a strong pack. They can move the ball well. Obviously, like I said, in Jamin Hodgkins, they have a pretty unreal fullback that can also play fly half, I suppose too. So that's a great player to see. Just like I don't know, just overall phenomenal tournament. Super exciting to see the Arrows win, but also like seeing what BC brought to the table, what the Atlantic Selects brought to the table. It feels like just such a great developing thing for Canadian rugby, especially within this like age group too.
Yeah. Yeah, it's gonna be interesting to see like which players get selected for any future
Yeah, because
options, both in terms of Canada as a national team and the
well, it looks like
professional
this.
opportunities in Major League Rugby because there
Yeah.
were definitely coaches
It definitely looks
and
like guys that can play in MLR right now. Well, even
yeah,
like because even like one of the things that we've kind of said like earlier, like that being torn between the idea that it's probably way too early to actually judge any MLR team's drafting ability yet, because like with the exception of a few guys that have the Sam Gallas, Connor Mooneyhams of the world, right? Like with the
mhm,
exception of a few of those guys that are able to just jump right into the league. um it's it is guys still need a little bit of time to develop after they get drafted. So it's kind of tough to see how any of that paired out. But like at the same time, we've also been saying that like Owen Rattan has been the only like Arrow draft pick that's really played for the Arrows.
mhm.
But I think this tournament also kind of shows that it's like, yeah, you just got to give guys some time too. Because I thought like Sam Mace was playing and
Yeah,
he was very good, and he was playing at tight head prop instead of his normal hooker position too, right? So it's like,
Yeah.
that's obviously, kind of a positive thing. Marc-Antoine Ouellette was playing for the Atlantic Selects too. So it was nice to see him getting in some extra, some more game time, even though it's kind of weird to have a player that's technically on the big Arrows roster playing against the Arrows Academy. But
Yeah.
hey, to each your own. There was guys, that's I guess kind of the interesting thing about being from Quebec with this tournament is there was guys from Quebec on Toronto and guys from Quebec on the Atlantic.
Selects, yeah.
Um,
When you consider that the what was it, the the Canadian Rugby Championship, so
yeah,
the historical team of like the Atlantic Rock used to cover like Quebec as well, and now that the Arrows exist and their recruitment facility does go into like Quebec itself, is like a big overlap in terms of like loyalty and affiliation. So, I'm nothing against any Quebec guys if they want to play for either team.
Oh no, yeah,
just playing is
play for
good
which
enough.
team wants you to. But it's I think that's kind of the thing that like this. I thought all three games. We talked about the BC Atlantic game, the Fog Bowl that that was last week, on the previous episode. But I thought all three games were incredibly entertaining, and like it was great to see the Rugby Network pick it up. It's great to see people interacting on social media, talking about these games and stuff too. Like we said, it feels big for the future of Canadian rugby, both in the sense that I'm hoping MLR teams are watching these games, kind of looking at, because there was draft eligible guys in this game. Obviously, not everybody's draft eligible, but and even if there's not, it's like there looks like there's guys that could probably play in MLR, or maybe if not next year, maybe like could be a team could benefit from if they took the time to help develop them a bit more. But it just, my only complaint about the tournament in a weird way is like it felt like watching like a really great movie that you're just like, oh damn, it's over.
Yeah.
Right? And you're just kind of like immediately like, can I have we gushed over Across the Spider-Verse on this podcast for like 5 minutes at like an intro, and it's like at the end of that movie I was like, I can do 3 more hours of this, like where's the next part, right? And that's kind of my only complaint about this tournament right now is like when I'm watching Max Goodwin hoist the anchor with his team, and I'm just kind of like partly sitting there being like super excited for the Arrows, but also partly being like, I could do like 7 more games of these.
Yeah.
And I guess I don't really know where I'm sure I don't really know where the feasibility of it is, but it's like, I wonder like how this tournament could grow. Because it's like, it's a really cool thing, but also at the same time, 3 games feels a little short in a way.
Yeah, I get that.
And like, that's not necessarily like a criticism of like, I mean, it's the start of it, but it's something to be like, it would be cool to see it grow, maybe get like, there's obviously BC has a team, but maybe get like, you alluded to the old Canadian Rugby Championship. They had the Prairie Wolf Pack in that. Maybe there's like, a team that could represent that part of the country could come into the Coast to Coast Cup too, make it the true Coast to Coast Cup, have all regions of the country kind of represented. Right. Or even like you said, it's like, or even like, any other teams or programs that could start up that, can get players of this caliber to kind of come in and enter it. Like that, I think would be cool. Maybe, I mean, I know it's called the Coast to Coast Cup and it's Canada, but I mean, maybe even invite like a Free Jacks Academy team or something up to it, because that's going to be close for them too if we keep doing it in Halifax, assuming.
Yeah, well, actually,
I mean, yeah, it's like,
wasn't the last one in BC?
No, it was in Halifax too.
Oh, they've okay. Oh, fair enough. Well, yeah, as in, I agree.
That's why the trophy's an anchor. That was a Halifax creation.
Okay, all right.
But
well,
like I guess what I'm trying to is like, but even like if it just stays at 3 teams too, like I wonder like if is there a way to like can we get everybody to like play each other twice or something? Like make the just kind of make it a little bit longer, like give everybody 4 games instead of 2, maybe. Like I don't like yeah, because it's like I mean I thought it was great rugby, but I think like I guess it's like I guess I feel like if my only complaint is I wish there was more of this, it's pretty good.
Yeah,
Right. It's just like, yeah, like I just like that's kind of like I'm excited to see how it expands. And I'm just kind of like, like I would love to see like, either some combination of more teams or just even if or if it
yeah,
just stays with these three teams, right, for the time being, is like somehow mix in like more games or even do like I don't know, play each other twice and then do like a final, like whoever has the best record after 4 games or something.
I think a fourth team so that it's even. So it's we can
Yeah.
have essentially like double headers for
Yeah, that could be cool.
the
But even
time. So
like if you, yeah, that could be cool. But even also like a fourth team just kind of like round it out too.
yeah, that's what. So but then you can have like 3 double headers essentially. So you'll
Yeah,
have
have everybody play
so
like,
yeah,
yeah, you can have
selects
everyone play Saturday and
BC,
Wednesday.
Top Gun versus Wolfpack, and then you just mix. And so they only play once, and it's still the same time frame. But then you've basically given another 25 guys opportunity to be on the pitch in front of these,
The only
coaches,
issue,
selectors.
I guess, the only other issue with that though would be like the way you just presented that is 3 games in 8 days forever, which is a lot too, right?
It is a
I don't
lot.
know.
And I think we can also have like some kind of rules of like um, players can only play a maximum amount of minutes.
No,
Like
you
they,
have to treat it like a real full. Like if the idea is to develop guys to make the jump, you have to treat it like you can't have time limits. And well, I mean, you can maybe coaches
you
would
can.
strategize for that.
Yeah, that's what I mean. In so, for example, a lot of the guys that came on the bench for Top Gun
I
against
think.
BC were then starting for the game against
I
Selects, or
think.
vice versa.
Yeah, I mean, I think ultimately, as whether any of these ideas that we're randomly spewing out right now are relatively feasible or not. I think the point I think it just circles back to the point and be like it would be cool to see this tournament expand and be
Yeah,
bigger and maybe
yeah,
longer than a week,
yeah,
more than 4 total and more than 3 total games.
yeah.
Right.
I think that's the big takeaway. This is great.
Yeah.
More, please.
Yeah, exactly. Like I'm just like I like you can get the arrows. You can get like Corey Hector, Curry Hitchborn, and Doc Gillis together and be like, how can and they as the coaching staffs of the teams, like I'm sure they can come up with I feel like they would be able to come up with something that could obviously not jeopardize the health of the players by making them play too much in a short window, but also I feel like there's something here, and I'm just like, it would be cool to have it be a little bit bigger somehow. Whether that's more teams or more games or a combination of the two of them. I think I mean like I think it's a great thing for Canadian rugby as a whole to see these guys who are younger players across the country coming together to kind of all play each other, right? I think is amazing. I just and I mean like like I mean there's a lot of games, there's obviously a lot of summer left, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's like it'd be
Yeah.
cool to maybe I mean maybe even outside the coast to coast cup. I mean obviously like Top Gun's already played the selects home and away in like Toronto and out there, and or sorry, no, maybe not. They played Quebec here and in Montreal, and then I think they just played the selects here, and then obviously for the Coast to Coast Cup match. But it's like, yeah, like you can do stuff like that too. Like you can maybe it doesn't all have to be on one week. Like maybe we can like incorporate like, yeah, go play like fly out to Vancouver, go play like that's round 1 out there, and then kind of play round 2 in Toronto, round 3 in Halifax or something.
Yeah.
Like I don't know. I have no idea. I just want to see more of it. I just want to see more of it.
Yeah.
We're just rambling now.
Yeah. But anyway, congratulations to Top Gun on lifting the anchor.
Yeah.
And, just got to defend it next season. So good luck
I didn't
with
know
it.
airplanes needed anchors, but I'm glad we found one.
Oh, good. Okay, so we now move on from like the academy setup and developing players to the men's national team because finally, we have official confirmation of Canada men's 15s playing games this August, and they will be playing two games in Tonga in the capital in Nuku'alofa on August 10th and 15th this year. This will be Tonga's first home games since 2017 and will also mark 100 years of the Tonga Rugby Union. So, according to the press release, it has also been revealed that prior to arriving in Tonga, Canada will hold a training camp in Nadi, Fiji, which will include a training scrimmage against the Fijian Jura, which is Fiji's Super Rugby team or team that plays in the Super Rugby Pacific. It's going to be the first time the men's rugby team has come together since playing in Amsterdam last November. And we have a quote from head coach Kingsley Jones. Our week-long camp in Fiji will be tremendous preparation for us ahead of playing Tonga, who will be performing at their peak as they prime themselves for one of the strongest World Cup campaigns in Tongan history. We need opportunities to play against top rugby nations, and these matches in Tonga will help us build our base as we journey towards 2025 and qualification for the next Rugby World Cup. So, in this press release, there's also a long list of 41 players that have been named. And from that list, it'll be whittled down to 32, which will be the traveling roster selected in July. And with this team traveling in the South Pacific, while Canada's men's sevens program prepares for the Olympic qualification out on Vancouver Island in August as well, it'll be a busy month for the Canada men's rugby players. Jones continues, we are excited to have so many players active and preparing for competition throughout the summer, and there has been collaboration amongst all our programs to ensure that players are in the right competitive environments this season. The tour in Tonga also presents a potential opportunity for some young up-and-comers who have impressed with the Pacific Pride and in the MLR to gain experience on the international stage. I'm looking forward to seeing this group grow and learn during our time in Fiji and Tonga. It also, because these games are taking place in August, which is over a month and a half away, there's no information about kickoff times, how they'll be broadcast, but that will be announced in the coming weeks. So we have the long list, and there's a lot of names that are very familiar. The biggest contributors are the Toronto Arrows and the New England Free Jacks, or Canada South training facility. But we've also got some guys that are currently playing in New Zealand. So, for example, Jacob Bossy, who's currently with Sportswood United. Isaac Kelly, who's also with Sportswood United. These are both uncapped players, but currently playing in New Zealand. And Callum Botcher, who got one cap, I believe, in the test in Amsterdam, who's currently with New Plymouth Old Boys. There's a lot of
Gabe Casey too, was draft pick.
Yeah,
some there in New Zealand.
Yeah, we've also got Siaki Vikilani, who is also now in New Zealand as well.
It's true,
That was something I came to, but has been playing with the American Raptors this season. Owen Rattan, Zephyr Melnick, as you mentioned, is Travis Larson.
Score 3 tries, you end up on the squad. That's it.
Yeah, so and we have Dakota and Talon McMullen of the Thunderbirds. Mitch Richardson is also in this long list as well, as is Liam Bowman, Travis Larson, as I mentioned, Deshaun Bowen, Kieran Breen, Jack Shaw from Rugby ATL as well, and Kainoa Lloyd, who, as we were saying in the last week, just rocked up, plays one game for the Houston Sabercats, scores a try, and is automatically in the long list for Canada selection. So,
yeah. So, I know on this podcast we complain about a lot of things that Kingsley Jones does.
Yeah.
I really like this squad, man.
This is the thing. This is only the long list. When we get down to the 32
Yeah.
names, then we'll start complaining again. So,
Well, dude, I don't even know.
Just a notice to our, our long-time
Yeah.
listeners going on. Hang on a second.
Yeah.
So some notable absences
Dude,
are.
I don't even care about the absences.
I was saying Quinn Nawadi and Andrew Coe for New York. Neither of them are on this long list. Now, Andrew Coe wasn't selected for the game this past weekend, so it may be that he's nursing a few injuries. And
that's the thing. It didn't continue with the names, though.
Yeah, but Piers von Dadelsen, who's currently at Oxford University in the UK. Now, he already has 2 caps. Again, I think he got those.
He's on
last year. Yeah, he's on the list as well. But so I was saying I'm just saying those 2 stood out because they're currently in an MLR playoff. Or sorry, they were in an MLR playoff team when this was announced, and they weren't listed. Now, there's also the absence of a list of saying these players were unavailable for selection for whatever reason.
Yeah.
So,
well, I think ultimately, I mean, we've seen obviously some of the names like Cole, like you said, it's he didn't play against in the playoff game for New York, so maybe he's injured, but also maybe he's going to go play for that Olympic qualifying tournament in sevens because he does bounce back and forth between those two.
That is a
there
strong likelihood.
Yeah, there's a couple guys that you can maybe say that to, but ultimately, right now, Stu, we're talking about a game that realistically means nothing for Rugby Canada.
Yeah.
Right. Other than playing Tonga. It's probably going to mean a lot for Tonga. Like you said, it's their first home game since 2017, and it's going to be a World Cup warm-up. There's obviously, because of that rule too, that new rule change that allows players to switch countries after 3 years. There's probably going to be a lot of guys that are suiting up for Tonga for the first time in that game as well. So I'm sure those guys will be jacked up for that too. It'll be obviously their first home game playing for Tonga too. But for Canada, it's this is really, to me, it's really obviously this is about development and building the squad for the future. And I kind of love that basically every position has one guy, one vet, and then a whole bunch of uncapped guys or guys with less than 10 caps or even less than 5 in certain positions.
I've just looked at the midfield selection.
And I love it.
In midfield, there are 27 caps among 6 players. And that's Ben Lesage, 27, everyone else uncapped.
But that's the point though, right? So it's
exactly.
Bowman, who obviously made his MLR debut this year, Gabe Casey, who's an MLR draft pick, Dakota and Talon McMullen, who are both just nasty, and Mitch Richardson, who I've spent the last 3 podcasts talking about how he's the most underrated player in MLR, and I'm happy to see that he's finally in a Canada squad, and he better get a cap because he's been outstanding. But it's I love that. I love the front row too. You got Sears Duru, Quatrin, and Keith, and then everybody else has no more than 9 caps, and that's Tyler Rowland, who has 9. Everybody else is either uncapped or has 1. Steve's Young and Foster Dewitt all have 1. Murray's got 4. Then you got Callie Martinez, who's played great for New sorry, I said thank you. Not New England. He's played great for DC. He's played great for DC this year. Tyler Wong has obviously also, he's played well for Toronto in what did he play? 4 games, last 4 games of the year. You can kind of carry that into again, the second row, it's the same theme, right? You have Connor Keys and uncapped Isaac Kelly, 2 caps Mason Flesh, and then 6 capped Regan O'Gorman. A back row is 47 cap Lucas Rumble, whole bunch of guys under 10 caps, including, as you said, Travis Larson, Zephyr Melnick with 0 caps, and also Matt Klimchuk, who played really well for BC at the Coast to Coast Cup as well. The backs, it's a little as you said, the midfield's really cool because Lesage, and then just a whole bunch of guys that are going to get their first cap and deserve it.
Yeah.
The outside backs, you have Kainoa Lloyd and then Spencer Jones. Kainoa Lloyd has 21 caps. Spencer Jones has 6. And then
Isaac Olsen has 1.
Isaac Olsen has 1. And then
you have Shaw,
Bowen, Green, and Shaw
Bowen
all have none. And I think like that's really great. The issue kind of almost seems to really come down to like, I love the fact that this squad is just like, okay, here's a couple of vets that can teach all of these kids how to how to be a pro in a test setting, right?
Yeah.
How does it feel to go on tour? How does it feel to get, to go on tour to Tonga? How does it feel to, maybe balance the fact that maybe, hey, yeah, you probably want to go do some sightseeing, but also like you're here to do a job, right? Like, how do you balance that? How do you act on the road? How do you act in training? So you have all of these guys. You have these guys like Sears Duru, like Rumball, like Lesage, to kind of teach everybody at their position, like this is how you be a pro at the test level. But also, just obviously, this squad is just a complete eye on the future of Rugby Canada. Like, if there is going to be a moment, because I mean, I said that I'm not a huge fan of Kingsley Jones, even though I really like this squad. But like, there's a big question around like his contract ending at the end of the next month, or not the end of the next month, but at the end of the year, excuse me. And there's obviously a massive, large majority section of the fan base that I believe also includes us that would like to see a coaching change being made, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, who knows kind of what's going to happen there. But at the same time, it's like, I love that. It's like, all right, we got to start looking at the players for the future. And with that, the only issue is like, I wonder if there's like an issue at the halfbacks. Just like the halfbacks that are listed here. So you got scrum half Jason Higgins and Ross Brody. Both of those guys are obviously still young and easily the 2 best scrum halves in Canada right now. Right. So like no like issues with them being there, but it's kind of Brody only has 12 caps. Higgins only has 9. Right. So it's still like, in the grand scheme of things, still super young guys. Right. That's still like an eye on the future. They'll be on the team for a while. Fly half though is interesting. Because you have Robbie Povey, who's 26 years old. He'll be 27 in September, right? Mm-hmm. Peter Nelson, who's 30. He'll be 31 in October. And Graydon Bowd, who is also 30 and will be 31 in August, right? Meaning essentially, by the time the next World Cup rolls around, all of these guys are going to be well north of 30.
Yeah.
Right. So Povey will be over 30, and then Bowd and Nelson will be like 35.
Yeah. Right? Actually, that brings up another notable omission at Shane O'Leary wasn't selected.
Okay, so
Shane O'Leary is also older than those 3.
Yeah. So that's a great point, Stu. But like again, Shane O'Leary is also 30 years old. Yeah, 30 years old.
So he just turned 34.
He just turned 30. So he turned 30 in March. So he's 93. Bowd and Nelson are 92. But like, so like again though, like that's kind of the point though too, right? Is your immediate reaction to like, and like in all honesty, who knows why Shane O'Leary has been ignored by Kingsley Jones and Rugby Canada for so long, right? Because like I think he deserves way more test caps than what he has.
Yeah.
But again, though, like you just said, though, it's like he's going to be 34 at the next World Cup, right. And the fact that like you immediately went to another guy that's going to be that's already over 30. Right. And it's like, so who's like, I'm like, when I'm looking at this and it's like, I see, it's like, okay, so we clearly have, guys, and we clearly have a whole group of forwards that Rugby Canada is willing to, see what we have in them. We have a huge group of midfields and we have a huge group of backs or outside backs, excuse me. Right. But it's like, do we not like, man, we got to find some young fly halves and scrum halves to
Yeah.
right to kind of like develop going into the future. Brody and Higgins are going to be fine because like I mean they're still young enough. But like the fact that it looks like this entire squad is aiming super young, super inexperienced, and then fly half is Povey's 26. So I mean, yeah, you can have a veteran fly half on your team at the next World Cup who'd be like 30, 31 years old. But like for me, I'm kind of like I don't know, like I want to see like with what the rest of this squad is. I want to see like a 22-year-old fly half or something, right? Like I mean, we watched the Coast to Coast Cup. You had a Tyrion Neville for the Arrows looked pretty good, right? Like and said like I guess Jamin Hodgkins kind of played fullback, but I guess he could play fly half, but he looked good too, right? And it's like
just need to get
there's a whole bunch of guys
that young guys kicking.
Yeah, I mean, it's like there's been a whole like, and I mean, it doesn't even have to be them. It's like there's obviously guys that play for have played for the U20 team, and it's like just throw one of them in there, because like realistically, Bowd, Nelson, and Povey are the three Canadian fly halves in MLR.
Yeah,
right. And it's a big question. I think looking at the squad is just like, well, like who's next? Because this squad kind of answers, at least off first glance, like who Rugby Canada kind of views as next up at pretty much every position, right?
Yeah,
it's like you kind of have to obviously see what these players have, right?
But it is just like,
but it's like, why are all the fly halves over 30 already? Like, well, Povey's not over 30, but he'll be over 30 by the time the next World Cup comes around.
Yeah.
But it's like everybody on this team is so young, with the exception of I guess a couple of veteran guys. But it's like everybody on this team is so young. But then you look at the fly halves, and it's like you got two 30-year-olds and a 20. By the end of the calendar year, two guys will be 31. One guy's going to be 27, right? So, I mean, that's kind of like, that's where I see like concern as far as like the rest of the roster though. And I know there's a lot of big names that got left off the squad, like, and we don't necessarily know why, guys like Matt Heaton. And I mean, like, I don't need to see Matt Heaton right now. Like, I feel like if we play, like, I mean, if you want to, you can maybe swap Heaton and Rumball, but Rumball's the captain. So he's obviously going to bring him.
Yeah.
But like, you can maybe do that or something similar. But I kind of like to have one. I kind of like to have one vet at every position, and then just a whole bunch of young kids and stuff. Because I mean, this is not the best Rugby Canada team you can put forward, but it feels like it might be the right Rugby Canada team to put forward right now, which is weird because it almost feels weird to like kind of be like looking at a Rugby Canada thing and being like, I actually kind of like this because it's been a while since I've had this feeling. But I do actually kind of like the way that this squad was picked, because it's like, honestly, I don't care if you beat Tonga.
Yeah. No, I know where you're coming from. As in, one team is preparing for the World Cup and the other team is Canada.
The other team is preparing to prepare for the World Cup.
Yeah.
For like then to prepare the other, Canada's preparing.
Yeah.
To
like,
qualify.
There's one team has more to gain from this than the other.
Yeah.
And so I think like, to be honest, I would be perfectly okay having a majority uncapped starting 15 for these games, and then you bring on like the more experienced guys towards the end to maybe
I agree,
steer it that way.
Well, even at that, like I agree, like maybe put like you could even go like Quattro and Rumball in the pack, and then just be like, all right, everybody else is basically uncapped or has like under 10, right? Or like just a couple, and then you can go like, well, like you said, it's like you're gonna have you're kind of, again, your scrum half, fly half, you're going to obviously have guys that have caps and stuff, and then like probably go Lesage, and then everybody else is new, like, right? And then have like the balance of like have a vet or two on the bench that can come in late too and stuff. But it's just, like, I'm more curious, even with this, I'm more like, I don't even know if I care if Ben Lesage plays in this because I'm like
Well,
everybody
okay,
else.
and well, that's the thing. We're hypothesizing from this
Yeah.
41 man long list. We're going to give it a few weeks until they announce what the actual touring squad is going to be, and then we're going to say what our preferred starting
Yeah. That'd be fun.
15 would be. So that is for a future episode. But for now, there were. I think we've talked about the Coast to Coast Cup and what's coming up for the Canadian teams, but let's not forget there was this like small, unimportant rugby competition that was going on south of the border that I suppose we should talk about. And let's get started with the MLR Eliminator games. So first up, we had Seattle hosting Houston. It seemed to be a tough contest that emerged at the start, but as the game wore on, Seattle were able to claw it back, and especially at the end, I think it summed up Houston's game where they'd reclaimed the ball, running forward, and then just knocked it on. Just the ball was like, you know what? Nope, I don't want to do this. I'm out of here. Straight forward, out of the players' hands into Seattle's, and they got that ball over for the try that solidified them winning the Western Eliminator. The final score, Seattle 37, Houston 26. Now, I will say there was only one Canadian player across both teams, but, the team that had the Canadian player won. So, Houston, that's what you have to look at during the off season.
That was kind of the weird thing too, like before this game, right? They had obviously I guess Povey, I guess, is injured to some capacity. Obviously, like Coates are playing at fly half is probably what the Sabercats want anyways. Maybe Povey playing 15, but I guess he's hurt. And then like I guess on their roster, like they signed a Raptor, and everyone's just like I think the thing is on all honesty, I have no issue with Houston like signing new players right before the playoffs. Really, but I'm just like it was a moment when I'm just like, what are the rules? Like, right. And it's I think it's a thing that sometimes like the MLR has kind of struggled with, where it's like, earlier in the year we were talking about a trade and signing deadline, and then every team is announcing signings after that deadline. So like obviously, everybody sees that Latu is on the roster, right? And we all everyone's just kind of like immediately like, so I guess he's injury cover for a handful of Sabercats that were out, right, including Robbie Povey. But it's just like, okay, are you like, I know that like there's this feels like there's just this weird like air of secrecy around some of these rules.
Yeah.
It's like, again, I don't like, if Houston's allowed to do this, I don't care. Right. Like, that's not my gripe. I just want to know that Houston's allowed to do this.
Yeah. I don't think it's also beyond the realm of possibility of saying these are the rules. Like, the most common one being that a player had to play at least 4 MLR games during the season to be able to play in the playoffs. And then if there's a case such as this, like, so according to America's Rugby News, they said there had been injuries to Drew Wild, Christian Dyer, and Robbie Povey, with Zach Pangilinan also out. So then you say, okay, then you can sign Latu, but you can even then do a press release saying that because of their injuries, they've had to sign this player, and we've agreed to it and then it's on the proviso that Wild, Dyer, Povey, and Pangilinan aren't then playing in any other games whilst the series is going on.
It's even that too. It's like, why'd they sign? I don't understand why they signed Kainoa Lloyd last week, or like to just play one game and then not play in the playoffs either. Like, I don't like. That's the thing. It's like I don't like. And it's just like, because we know that if you watch any other sports league, right? Like that the salary caps and all the player transaction moves, like leagues have really deep rule books on how you're allowed to like actually construct your roster. and stuff, right? And I'm sure the MLR has one as well. It's just it's a situation like this where I'm like, man, like I would love that to be public. It's like I think I've come to the point where I'm like, I don't think like we'll ever know like how much money players and stuff are making. Although I mean, there was an article on Adam Gilchrist and the LA Guiltinis that came out that's kind of like, oh damn, no wonder you guys got caught.
Yeah.
That's a lot of money. But either way, I was just like I just want to know what the rules are and like what you can do. Right. Like even if you don't want to go even if the league's still not at the point where like you got to give every detail, it's still like I just want to know what you're allowed to do because the Houston lineup was honestly confusing. But onto the game, it's like, man, Houston had all the possession early and did nothing with it. And then Seattle I feel like Seattle just kind of made them pay for it a little bit, as you kind of said, right? Like a little bit better execution, a little bit better discipline. Seattle kind of shot themselves in the foot a couple times in this game too. And yeah, I mean, good for Seattle, man. They they're like what 7-1 now in the postseason, which is a pretty unreal record. When you really think about it, that one obviously was against New York in the final last year. But yeah, off to San Diego, which I mean just kind of feels like that's what the West Final should be. It feels like that.
Yeah, that feels appropriate. Conversely, in the East, which has been topsy-turvy all season, it was definitely the result that we both said, New York's clearly going to win this. They're going to do it and get it sorted. And
I had a nice 0-2 week.
So as we eat this humble pie, and to be honest, when the game started, it looked like New York were setting the pace early. They scored the first try within 90 seconds.
That was the best because the commentary team spent the entire pregame talking about how great Old Glory's defense was, and then they got scored on like 45 seconds.
Well, their defense may have been a bit ahead of the buzzer, but their response to it was practically immediate with another try followed up. And then there came the penalty try and Carl Bailey taking some time in the sin bin. And then you had Fawcett getting the first of his 2 tries. And yeah, so even though the flags were getting penalties, and Bonilla was, keeping the scoreline ticking, 3 points to 5 is not the same. And, it did look like New York were going to take this away. And it was only in the second half where things turned around. So Kyle Bailey went from villain to hero for DC, picking up the try. Then it was DC's turn to get a penalty try with Lange taking 10 minutes in the sin bin. And just towards the end, just to seal it, it was a fantastic turnover with a breakout and Kurt Baker putting the final try for DC, essentially putting it beyond reach for the time left for New York. They did get the final say of the game with Perry scoring a try in the 80th minute and
Weird how both games ended like that.
Yeah. It wasn't it wasn't the wind out of the sails as it was for maybe the I get to that in that although Houston did score a try right and when the clock was in the red, it was still 11 points difference to Seattle. This one makes it look far more competitive with only being 4-point difference. But
I think the big storyline in this is Derek Summers owes Kurt Baker a beer for scoring that try, so Old Glory won this game anyways.
Yeah, and I was saying how the other game only had one Canadian player, and that's the team that won. Well, New York did have a Canadian on their bench, but they never used Quinn Nawani. So again, I'm just saying the team with played the more Canadians won the game. Yes, DC didn't use Cali Martinez, but they had Kyle Bailey, who was in the captain role for this game. We had Doug Fraser, who was fantastic for up until he got subbed in the 53rd minute. And well, interestingly, it was meant to be Graydon Bowd starting at 10, but he was withdrawn before kickoff. So
Yeah.
hoping he's doing okay and that he'll be playing in the game against New England, which will be on this Saturday. But again, it feels like with both of these games, it's like the eliminator was who has the honor of being destroyed by the leader of in their conferences.
Well, yeah, like I mean, that was kind of the thing. It's like watching this game, I was kind of like that is a small part of watching this game. I was like, man, New England is gonna slaughter both of these teams. Like it's I mean, neither one of them looked like they were super interested in playing a whole lot of defense in this. Obviously, both teams scoring over 30 points. Kind of points to that. But also like, you had a couple execution errors and stuff, some like, big counterattack tries and things that are really hard to do against New England. And I mean, New England walked through the Eastern Conference this year. Like they were 10-0 against the Eastern. Yeah. It's like I don't know.
Right. I'm not. Okay, so speaking of these games, I think we'll move on to predictions because you made it we're making it very clear who we're picking.
New England, San Diego. It's
really like I'll be honest. Part of me doesn't want to go against Seattle because they have been the most successful team.
I think
in MLR when it comes to the championship series.
I think
so.
Seattle,
it doesn't surprise me. But
yeah,
San Diego have beaten them twice already this year. So
I mean, I think like for both teams, I'm just like I think I can see Seattle ups winning way more than I can see Old Glory winning. Like just based on like their form like the whole year, right? Like Seattle obviously, was basically right on San Diego's tail the whole year. And I believe San Diego's only loss is to Seattle as well.
No, it's to Houston.
Oh, it's to Houston. Okay. So
Seattle have done the job of eliminating the only team that beat them. So I don't know.
So like Seattle, actually you just said that San Diego beat Seattle twice, and I still said that. I'm an idiot. Anyways, but like I think like Seattle's obviously kind of been on their tail like all year. For like Old Glory, they obviously lost to New England twice, and it's like you know what I mean? And it's like I mean, winning this game moves Old Glory to 8 wins out of 17 games. Like they're still below 500. Even a playoff win. Like they're a below 500 team who like at the end of the season allowed the second most points in the Eastern Conference, with the only team that's allowed more was Toronto.
So it does seem as though this
does not add up well for Old Glory, I don't think. Like I mean, there is not a team in the East that feels like they have given like New England like a run. And obviously they're undefeated. They're undefeated against the Eastern Conference. They're undefeated at home, and they're probably gonna line like 7 to 12 Canadians. So I mean, like this is like it's over.
I mean, it's over. So again, those games are New England versus DC, and that game will be on 5:30 p.m. on July 1st. So happy Canada Day.
Another reason why New England's gonna win.
And that will be on, if you're listening from the United States, it'll be on Fox Sports 1 or 2. They may change it without letting any of us know. And San Diego will be hosting the Seattle Seawolves on July 2nd at 6 p.m. Eastern Time, which will be 3 p.m. Pacific Time. And that will be on Fox Sports 2. But if you are Canadian, like our podcast is, you can watch that game for free on the Rugby Network. So if you enjoyed this episode, be sure to check out more as well as written pieces on our website, therougerugby.com. You can also find our podcast on Spotify, S4P, and Apple Podcasts. We also have our YouTube channel at the Rouge Rugby with episodes of the podcast as well as our extra interviews in our Black Box section. Make sure to like and subscribe and hit the bell notification to stay up to date on all our videos. We're also available across social media, including Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok, all at the Rouge Rugby. Derek, where can the fine people find you?
At Brissette the Jet across all social media networks.
And you can find me at Hardman, spelled H4RDMAN, across all social media platforms. Well, that's where we're going to end this episode. Derek, thank you for joining me, and thank you for joining us on the Rouge Rugby podcast, where we focus on real Canadian rugby. We hope you can join us again next time.